Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can always read my work on ESPN.com. Today, I'm joined by Daniel Oyefusi, who covers the Browns for ESPN. We're going to talk, of course, about the Myles Garrett situation in Cleveland, because if you're Washington, if he's available, which he wants to be, then you owe it to yourself and the organization to make a call to see what it would take to get him. But Daniel has all the goods on that. Why it's a complicated move for the Browns. It's not as simple as, oh, the guy wants out, let's go do it for him. What they might do, what they're saying now, and what it might take to entice them to get him to trade. There's a lot going on, and we're going to learn more over the next few months, but this is where it's at right now. So stay tuned for my conversation with Daniel in a minute. Before I get there, a couple things. For you Gold members, I'll be doing a private Zoom session Thursday night, 7:30 Eastern Time. I will also be joined by Ben Standig, of course, from The Athletic and the Last Man Standing podcast. So if that's for you Gold members, if you want to become a Gold member, go to the Ampire Media YouTube page, see the word join, go click on there, go from there, and come and join us, because it's always a good time talking to these guys, and they're taking advantage of a situation where you can talk to a beat reporter. I'm bringing other people on. I'll have other people on throughout the off season. So there you go. But Ben will join me Thursday night, 7:30 Eastern Time. Also, Thursday night is the NFL honors at the Super Bowl. That means it's the night where we will finally see Jayden Daniels is crowned as Rookie of the Year. He's been the presumptive favorite since early in the season. Warranted all that attention, lived up way more than lived up to his billing. And on Thursday night, he will. Clearly we're all expecting him to be crowned Rookie of the Year. I don't think that will surprise a single person, and it shouldn't. Even the Brock Bowers or Bo Nix guys who were out there for a while touting their guys shouldn't surprise anybody, folks, because this guy, few players had an impact like Jayden Daniels this year, and again, he warranted more discussion for MVP consideration. He's not in that, but he should have been. Anyway, so he's up for that. He'll get that tonight. Dan Quinn is also up for Coach of the Year. I don't believe he's going to get that. I do believe I believe it will be Kevin O'Connell from Minnesota, but we'll see. But I don't think it'll be Quinn, even though he clearly did a really good job with this place and injecting so much life and energy into an organization that desperately needed it. And then Cliff Kingsbury was not up for one of the Assistants of the Year, but he did a hell of a job as well. So anyway, there you go. That's all Thursday night. Now, before I get to my conversation with Daniel, one more thing to talk about, because it's another guy who is now available. That's Cooper Kupp from the Rams. Should Washington be in the market for Cooper Kupp? Would he help them? Well, of course he would help them if he's healthy. Now, there's a couple things to keep in mind with this situation. So, one, what would it take to get him? Well, he's going to be 32 this season, and he's missed 30. He's only played in 31 of the last 54 games that he's been, since 2022. So the durability is clear an issue. You do not get healthier as you get older. So that's one thing to keep in mind. That, of course, would lower the price. The Rams, he's very good receiver still, and he would definitely help these guys. But then again, what is the cost? So my sense would be early sense would be a lower round draft pick because of the cap situation, because of durability, et cetera. Now, a couple things to keep in mind here. Would you have to trade for him, or would they cut him and then he becomes available and then you bid on him? So I don't know what they'll be. I do know for the Rams, if they trade him, they would only be on the hook for, let's see, I think they would save 12.5 million on their salary cap. If they cut him, they would only save 7.5 million. So there's a $5 million difference that can help them, but it does, it is something to consider. Would they end up trading him? If, let's say, you wanted to trade for him, though, here's a couple things to keep in mind. His cap hit would be $20 million this year, and it would be 19.85 in 2026. But a couple things to consider with this. The Rams, he's owed a $7.5 million roster bonus this year. If the Rams pick that up, then the new team, would only be on the hook for $12.5 million this year. And keep in mind, after a certain point, there's only going to be $5 million guaranteed for 2026. So if you want to get him for a year, you could do that and get out of the Cooper Cup business without much damage. So just a few things to consider. And again, like, would he help him? Of course, but there are a lot of other things to consider here. And I don't think, the funny thing is, I think I keep seeing these things. Well, Washington can absorb it because they have the cap room. They've got to re-sign a lot. They have to re-sign a few guys, and so you're not going to have a ton of cap space to go outside and make all these big moves that everybody wants to make. You're going to have to be, I think, still judicious about how you want to allocate the money for some of those outside free agents. If you're going to keep some of your own guys like Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, Jeremy Chin, what do you do there? How much do all those guys cost? So I think you can't just say, well, they can absorb it. Go get this guy, go get this guy, go get this guy. You have to be very smart about how you're going to allocate the funds to improve, for sure. So that could mean like, hey, would you rather get a defensive end and a defensive tackle? If you moved on from, let's say they moved on from John Allen, well, then you can go do that. So there are a lot of things to consider with this. And you can't just look at, oh, they're going to have possibly $100 million in cap space and think you can just, oh, it's all going to, three or four big. You've got to be still smart about how you build this, for sure. But anyways, I just want to lay out the scenario for Kupp about financially what it would take. And then in terms of draft picks, what it would take. I don't know. Keenan Allen, I think, was it with Chicago in for a fourth round pick last year. So that to me would be the highest you would go for, because I think the durability concerns with, and then the cap, the money, whatever. So I think that would be something too. But again, if the Rams are looking, if they're going to pick up that bonus, they clearly want to get out from this contract. So there's a lot of motivation for them to sell, way more than for Cleveland. Cleveland's got to be enticed. The Rams want to get out of this. So they'll probably I think you can get a cheaper deal in terms of draft picks for sure for Cooper Kupp. Anyways, that's it for me, folks. So let's talk Myles Garrett. Here's my conversation with Daniel Oyefusi from ESPN, who covers the Browns. All right, Daniel. So the first big question with Myles Garrett is, how surprised were you?
Yeah, I think I was fairly surprised about the trade request. Now, keep in mind, this is something that was kind of bubbling. Is kind of getting bigger in stature with some of the comments that he made late in the season. Saying that he wanted to see the offseason plans and talk to the higher ups about their plans for this offseason, including at quarterback, before further committing to the organization. And there were some signs that maybe the conversations went well. Like he said, he had productive conversations. There was an episode of Hard Knocks a couple weeks ago where he said he spoke to the general manager Andrew Berry, and he left that conversation thinking like we have more talent, or we're closer to competing and contending than people might believe. So again, especially given the recent comments from Barry that he had no intentions to trade him, for Myles to now come out and say that he wants out of Cleveland. It was a bit of surprise, but from Miles's perspective, you have to see it as, this is a player who has been very loyal to the organization through
Right.
some lean years. He was there as a rookie when they went 0-16. He's only had two winning seasons. And he said that this 3-14 season was even more disappointing than that 0-16 year. So it's been a lot of losing. He's had the personal accolades, reigning defensive player of the year, a finalist for the award again. But now he wants to pair that with the team success. And he made that very clear during the season.
And obviously, like you said, Andrew Berry just at the Senior Bowl said no intention to trade him. How do you think his statement and desire changes what the Browns front office thinks or does?
Well, the Browns right now are saying that it doesn't change anything. Sources have said that the plan has not changed as regards to their intention to keep Myles Garrett in Cleveland. It's kind of a funny one-liner in there, I guess you could say. A couple weeks back at his end of season news conference, Andrew Berry said that his plan is for Myles Garrett to go from Cleveland to Canton. In his statement, Myles Garrett said the goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It was to compete for and win a Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
maybe a little bit of jab at those comments right there. But as of now, the plans with the Browns do not change. However, this recent public statement, maybe puts a little bit more pressure on the Browns as we start to get to the start of free agency, the draft a couple months away. I think teams are definitely going to be calling more now that they know that he wants out for sure.
And and listen, it goes without saying the guy's a really great player. But what has he meant there just on the field in the locker room?
I mean, on the field, the tape and the resume speaks for itself. Since entering the league, he has the second most sacks in the NFL, only trailing the Steelers' T.J. Watt. This past season, he just became the fourth fastest to reach 100 sacks. Since that became an official stat in 1982. Like we know he is, if not the best pass rusher in the NFL. He probably is. He probably is the best non-quarterback in the NFL when you just look at pound for pound, play for play resume. And then on the off the field, he's a guy that has really, really grown into a leadership role. When he first came in, there were talks about, him, maybe not being as mature as maybe a top tier guy on the team should be. Over the years, he's been really, adamant about, wanting to take on that leadership role, lead by example, but also lead through, words and actions. And he's a guy that a lot of people look to as a captain, as a leader on this team. So he's really grown not only as a player, but as a all-around leader. And obviously, he's a franchise cornerstone in this city.
You know that roster very well. Is there a way that they could entice him? Because we've seen, we saw like Brandon Ayuk, other receivers have said, I want to trade, and then they staying there or they get an extension. Do you think there's any way they could entice him? Is this any sort of a way? I mean, when you come out with a public statement, that's pretty strong. Like, that's really strong. But is there any way, do you think they could entice him to stay just by a couple moves, or is it beyond that for him?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was a big point of Miles's concerns. He said this team does have talent. Like he was not denying that. And again, we're just a year removed from them going 11-6, reaching the wild card round of the playoffs. This being the number one defense in the NFL. But obviously, the quarterback situation has been a very elusive, spot of consistency for this franchise, especially since returning
Right.
to the city back in 1999. 40 starting quarterbacks during that time frame, the most in the league. Obviously, the trade for Deshaun Watson has backfired. He struggled on the field. Now he's dealing with another injury. And Miles said that point blank. He said, for as much uncertainty as there is outside the organization, there's a lot of uncertainty inside the organization as it pertains to who's going to start at quarterback for us. So I think that's played a big part in maybe this decision to come out public and make this statement. The Browns are in a very tough spot, with the cap situation, with the number two overall pick, but not it being a quarterback rich class. So maybe there's not a quick fix where you can kind of snap your fingers, get a quarterback of the future the way the Commanders did last year at the number
Right.
two pick, and then be competing in the playoffs. That might not be the same case for the Browns in 2025. And again, Miles is turning 30 in December. He's had all the personal accolades. I think for him, that really falls a little or feels a bit hollow when he's watching from home and watching the playoffs from home year in and year out.
So you wrote an article for ESPN.com recently, which lays out some of the issues the Browns might face when trying to trade him because of the cap. You kind of lay out some of those issues that the Browns would face with a trade of this magnitude, with his contract.
Yeah, so I'll start with, excuse me, the Browns cap situation. They're about $63 million or projected to be $63 million over the cap in 2025. Obviously, you have to be cap compliant by the time free agency opens in mid-March. Now, the Browns are going to roll over about $50 million of unused cap space, and then they're going to make some other moves to free cap to become cap compliant. So, like they're going to have enough money to make moves and whatnot.
Okay.
But they've been really aggressive over the past couple of years in restructuring contracts, converting salaries to bonuses and kind of pushing it out, kind of the way the Saints have done. And
Right.
we talk about how they're kind of in cap hell. The Browns aren't necessarily in cap hell right now, but they have restructured Miles' contract a couple of times. And because of that, if they were to trade him before June 1st, I believe it's June 1st, it'd come with a $36 million dead cap charge. They really don't have the space to just take that on in year one. It's not like a post June 1 cut or something where you can break it up in multiple years. They'd have to take all of that in 2025. And then it's just kind of the practical sense of this being a regime, the head coach, the GM, that's frankly kind of coaching, GMing for their jobs in 2025. They're coming off of a 3-14 season. The owner has been known to be, kind of hasty in making decisions, and they did just get extensions, a little less than a year ago. But this is not a regime that can go through another 3, 4, 5 win season. So you just kind of look at the ramifications, the on-field ramifications of trading Myles Garrett. You will get a big return, whether it's two first round picks, a first round pick, a player, and then some. You're going to get a big return. But when you're kind of coaching for your job, GMing for your job in 2025, you have to ask yourself, are we better in 2025 and trying to, keep this opportunity? Are we better with or without Myles Garrett? And I think everyone would say that they are better with Myles Garrett on the roster in 2025.
Do you, and again, worse, this is February, so who the hell knows? But Miles in the situation, is this one that like, is he willing to say, hey, you know what? You don't trade me, I'm not showing up. Do you
Yeah,
think,
that's a good question. I mean, Miles. I mean, this is kind of new ground for
right,
Miles, and for the Browns with a franchise cornerstone. Again, he has been very loyal to this organization. He's re-signed with them. Stuck out the very very lean years. So we are going to find out. Obviously, I think the first time I guess OTAs, it starts out as being voluntary, but
right,
we're going to see maybe when we get to these mandatory mini camps and whatnot how how earnest he is and how
right.
adamant he is, and kind of forcing his way out of Cleveland. Again, the CBA does not make it, does not help players in their efforts to hold out and to kind of force their way out. They have to accrue all these big fines, that, you can't pay back, or you can't be taken back. So we're going to find out. This is something that's probably going to linger for the coming weeks and months for sure.
And then for Miles, like what, obviously he wants to go to Super Bowl contender. How do you like, do you have an idea of what teams might be enticing to him? And then what the value, what would it cost to get him? Are the Browns even entertaining the hypotheticals?
Yeah, well, at the Senior Bowl last week, the general manager Andrew Berry said that he would not. He said you can put it on the record that he would not
Right.
entertain even a hypothetical offer of two first round picks. So if he changed his mind, I would think that maybe the starting point would be two first round
Right.
picks. As it pertains to Miles, obviously I don't really know his thinking right now.
Right.
It's clear that he wants to go to a contender. Like he said it in the statement. He said it plainly. He wants to compete for a Super Bowl. So you'd have to think it's a team with a quarterback, so you can kind of start to cross some teams off that list that don't have very, very secure quarterback situations. And I think that he wants to be on a team that, that he can anchor the defense, maybe be the missing piece to that defense. So I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of people talking about maybe the Commanders,
Right.
as a team that has that ascending quarterback and Jaden Daniels. They have the cap space, they have the draft capital, and maybe the willingness to maximize that rookie contract window, and maybe offload some first round picks that are going to be late in the first round. And maybe a team like that. I know some other people have thrown out the Lions potentially as another team that has, a very solid starting quarterback, and maybe Miles can be the missing piece to that pass rush with Aiden Hutchinson. It's still a little early, but again, he obviously wants to go to a team that can contend. And if you're just kind of comparing it to a situation in Cleveland, he's going to want to go to a team that has a clear quarterback situation laid out.
Do you think like, because Washington's draft picks are, as you said, pretty low. Do you think that would be, and again, this is a hypothetical, which Andrew Barry doesn't want to entertain, so I'm asking you to entertain it instead. But a 29th pick, and then if they get Myles Garrett the next year, you would expect him to be just as good or better. So what would two low first round picks get it done? And I guess it depends who else is involved, but like it would seem like if you're the Browns, you're going to want to get more than that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know that there were some comparisons yesterday to the Khalil Mack trade
Right.
back in 2018, and he was a 27-year-old pass rusher, one of the best, if not the best pass rusher in the NFL. And he more or less went for, two first round picks, and a couple day two picks. They did some pick swaps with then the Oakland Raiders and Chicago Bears, but it was more or less two first round picks and some additional day two picks. So you're looking at a player in Myles Garrett, who is again the reigning defensive player of the year. You would expect him, he's just in tip-top shape, like he's a workout warrior. You would expect him, and especially at a position like pass rusher, you would expect him to be able to still produce at a very high level, into his early mid 30s. And The thing that we haven't really talked about is that the team that trades for Myles is probably going to have to give him a new contract. He has 2 years remaining on the extension he signed in 2020, but no more guaranteed money. So you probably have to be the trading team would probably have to be giving him a new contract that extends another 3, 4, 5 years. But a player like Myles and his stature, his position, the way his production, you would expect him to still be able to be a top producer at his position for the next 3 to 4 years. So yes, for somebody like that, who's a top five player, regardless of position, I think I would expect, at least two first round picks to just starting point for discussions.
Sure, and for sure. And I just wonder for Washington if those picks are too low to get it done. So if you had to throw a player in there, for example, is there a spot where, regardless of, we don't know the player, we don't know what they're looking for, but is there a position where you'd say, well, if you're going to trade to him, then can you get somebody over here that can help him? What positions would you identify as areas that they would want to fill, whether it's free agency, via trade, or the draft?
Yeah, well, I
Besides
would say
quarterback.
yeah, I was gonna say I would say quarterback, but we,
Yeah,
we,
they're
we
not
can't do
like
that.
this team's not trading Jane Daniels. So we'll take that off the table. But what positions would they maybe say, okay, we'll take two firsts and we'll accept a player at this spot?
Yeah, I mean, I look at just any of the other kind of premium positions on the field for the Browns. I would say maybe offensive tackle. The left tackle spot is a little unsettled. DeJuan Jones has played pretty well when he's been healthy, but he's had 2 straight years with season-ending injuries. If you could throw in maybe another wide receiver, maybe a number two wide receiver, something like that, that could be plug and play as a starter. Maybe a cornerback, something like that, where yeah, where if you're the Browns, you're thinking, yeah, we're giving up Myles Garrett, but we're also getting a pretty solid starter
Right,
at a premium position in addition to these picks. I think maybe that could sway it, but that's part of the calculus for sure.
right.
You want to stay, competitive, while also getting some draft capital that you can use for a multitude of things potentially.
Daniel, awesome. I appreciate your insight and thanks a lot.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Daniel for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Monday talking about the T. Higgins situation in Cincinnati as we get inch closer and closer to what Washington could do in the offseason. Should it involve T. Higgins? And also just a little bit on Joe Burrow and how he improved and why that and how it compares to Jaden Daniels, because the mindset is the same. And it's why I think Jaden Daniels will not suffer a sophomore slump. Anyways, folks, that's it for me. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.